to be in His presence this morning. The word of wisdom for today is plan. The word of wisdom for today is plan. When it comes to life, all of us like to strategize. All of us like to plan out the future course of events in our life. But when it comes to making your life plan, God's contribution towards your success is far greater than your own. Don't think for a second that you can achieve the things that you want to achieve without His strength and hope that He gives you, even when you are dealing with tough times in your life. Your contribution is still vital, but God's contribution is still number one. In the Old Testament, Nehemiah offers a good example of someone who knew that his plan depended on God. When Nehemiah was a cupbearer to the Persian king at the time, he heard that his hometown of Jerusalem had been destroyed and lay defenseless. There was no walls, everything was broken down, and the Israelites were trying to rebuild their prior civilization and regain their strength again. This troubled Nehemiah, so he decided to go home to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls. But he knew that he wouldn't get very far without a plan. The Bible says in Proverbs 16:9, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. We might strategize, but God has the final call. Nehemiah's plan for how he would get to Jerusalem it involves two vital steps. So number one, the first step is ask God for favor in your life. Nehemiah knew that he couldn't just impulsively suggest that the king let him go home to rebuild. Right, because at the time, the Persian king, he didn't want any rebellion. He didn't want any revolts happening. So Nehemiah had to proceed cautiously. So he prayed, asking for God's favor. According to Nehemiah 1:11, he says, "O Lord, please hear my prayer. Please grant me success today by making the king favorable to me. Put it into his heart to be kind to me." Notice that Nehemiah, he set the plan in motion, and he planned what he had to do, but in the end, he still asked for God's favor to seal the deal, to finalize the event that was about to take place. God's favor is God's grace, and you need it to make and fulfill your plans. Without God's favor in your life, the things that you want to achieve will not happen. Notice that Nehemiah also prayed, "Please grant me success." Sometimes you might think that you shouldn't ask God for success. Many times we feel that it's unnecessary, that it's implied, that God should automatically grant me success. But many times in our own life, we should ask God to grant us success, because there's nothing wrong with praying for success when you are trusting God to do the work for you. And the second step is prepare for an opportunity and then wait. Nehemiah had to wait before he was given an opportunity to present his plan. Notice that things didn't happen automatically, and at the time he was very zealous. He was very passionate about helping the Israelites, helping them rebuild Jerusalem. But he knew that if he were to rush this, if he weren't to plan properly, then the king might be upset. The king might have not even sent him in the first place, and then the king might have punished the Israelites by bringing them back to Persia. So Nehemiah had to wait before he was given an opportunity to present his plan to the king. Then one day, 4 months later, when the emperor was dining, Nehemiah took the wine to him, because he's the cupbearer, and that's when Nehemiah presented the plan. Because Nehemiah had plenty of time to prepare, he knew exactly what he wanted to say to the king. He knew the time, he knew the location, and he knew exactly what it would take for him to be favorable in the presence of the king. And he knew by the leading that God gave him that this was the time that God appointed for him. When you begin praying about a plan or a vision or a dream in your life that God has given you, he usually doesn't answer right away. And many times we are very impulsive and we want answers, we want things to be moving at our own pace, but that God doesn't allow that at times. God often waits to see how serious you are about it, whether you want to plan ahead, whether you want to pray ahead of time for this dream, for this vision. Are you going to keep praying and planning while you wait? Or is this some fantasy, or is this some dream that you came up with, and then as soon as things don't turn out the way that you want to, you instantly give up and you assume that God will never help you? God sometimes wants to test you and see whether you have the commitment to carry out the plan that he has for your life. If so, when you plan, when you pray ahead of time, you will be prepared to open the door when the opportunity knocks. So as we go throughout this week and for the rest of our lives, understand that when it comes to success in your life, God desires that for all of his people. But at the same time, don't assume that success is something that is automatic, something that comes according to your timetable. Success is derived from God's intervention in your life, and it comes from constant prayer and sacrifice on your end in order to trust God in the long run. And with that, may God bless this word.